Jing Jiahong snorted coldly, Yun Chuzhou, you keep saying that the divine phoenix forbids you from getting married. Who is he? Do you think everyone is a fool? The reason why Jing Jiahong questioned her like this was partly because he was angry that he couldn't get what he wanted. On the other hand, he wanted to destroy Yun Chujia's prestige in the Four Kingdoms, especially in the East Phoenix Kingdom. Hearing Jing Jiahong's question, Yun Chuzhou finally remembered that this was a battlefield and not a place for lovey-dovey. She turned to look at Jing Jiahong and said proudly, he is my fiancé, and he is the husband that the divine phoenix appointed for me. Why? Do you feel inferior compared to my Prince Charming? Let me tell you, my Prince Charming is very powerful. If you don't want to die, hurry up and take your men and get out of here. Otherwise, I'll teach you a lesson. Jing Jiahong was so angry that he was twitching. He finally understood that this bitch was the only one who had seen the divine phoenix, so she could say whatever she wanted. Even if others wanted to refute her, it would be useless. He looked at Di Baiming with disdain. Yun Chuzhou, you're exaggerating too much. Just him alone wants to turn the entire battle situation around. What a joke. What are you all standing there for? Continue to attack the city. When Jing Jiahong was shouting, he felt a murderous intent enveloping him. Then, he looked at a crystal-clear ice arrow shooting towards him in disbelief. Jing Jiahong could almost feel the bone-chilling ice arrow piercing into his glabella. Before he died, he only had one thought in his mind. How could this person's strength be so terrifying? Everyone was stunned by this sudden change. This man in white actually took the life of the crown prince of the Jingwood kingdom with a raise of his hand. One had to know that Jing Jiahong was under the protection of the soldiers of the Jingwood kingdom. That man stood on top of the wall and easily killed Jing Jiahong. This strength was too terrifying. Yun Chuzhou was also stunned, then she said proudly, did you see that? My Prince Charming is not an ordinary person. If you don't want to die, get out of my sight. Otherwise, you will end up like your bullshit crown prince. When the people of Jingmu Kingdom saw that the crown prince was dead, they didn't have the will to fight anymore. They immediately stopped attacking the city and retreated to Jialing City, which was hundreds of miles away, waiting for the order from Emperor Mu Xian. Yun Chuzhou asked Prime Minister Sima to bring some people to clean up the battlefield. Then, she looked at Di Baiming, who was standing with his hands behind his back, with starry eyes. Prince Charming, the way you killed Jing Jiahong just now was so cool. Were you trying to avenge me? Di Baiming did not turn around. He only said lightly, noisy. Yun Chuzhou was stunned. Then, she giggled and said, did you kill him because you thought he was too noisy? That's quite a good reason to show off. Yun Chuzhou grabbed Di Baiming's hand and wanted to bring him to stay in the city lord's mansion. Unexpectedly, Di Baiming dodged Yun Chujia's hand and turned his head to look at her, you, noisy. Yun Chuzhou, only then did she come back to her senses. She was too excited just now, so she did not notice anything unusual. For example, when she hugged him just now, his body was tense and stiff. He did not respond at all. Just now, he avoided her hand and said that she was noisy. Yun Chuzhou looked up at Di Baiming's eyes. His eyes were calm and emotionless. If she had not confirmed that he was a living person, she might have mistaken him for a statue. Yun Chuzhou suddenly felt uneasy. She pointed at herself and asked, do you know who I am? Di Baiming said indifferently, of course I do. You are my fiancé. Yun Chuzhou asked again, then do you remember everything that happened with me? Di Baiming's tone was still calm, of course I remember. Back then, you stole my exquisite scarlet sunset fruit. I went to settle the score with you. Then, what happened after that happened? Yun Chuzhou asked a few more questions that only the two of them knew. Although Di Baiming's tone and expression did not change, he answered all of them. Yun Chuzhou heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. Luckily, he did not lose his memory. However, why did he become so cold? Could it be the after-effects of unsealing again? Yun Chujio saw that there were busy soldiers around and could only say, "I'll bring you to the city lord's mansion to stay temporarily. I have something to ask you." Di Biming nodded lightly and followed Yun Chujio to the city lord's manor. On the way, Yun Chujio wanted to hold Di Biming's hand a few times, but Di Biming avoided her without batting an eyelid. In the end, he said coldly, "This venerable self doesn't like to be too close to others. Don't do such things in the future." Yun Chujio could not help but feel embarrassed. Anger gradually surged up in her heart. However, thinking about it, since they had just met, it was better to ask what exactly was going on first. Thus, this fellow forcefully suppressed the anger in his heart and brought Di Biming to the city lord's residence. At this moment, the voice transmission talisman in the storage ring started to tremble. Yun Chujio took it out and took a look. It was sent by Shui Wuji. She frowned slightly and sent her divine sense in. Shui Wuji's stammering voice came from inside. "Little sister Jiu, you've already seen that facial paralysis, right? Well, you have to be mentally prepared. There seems to be something wrong with that facial paralysis. It's not the sequela of the previous unsealing." Yun Chujio only understood a little after listening. Fortunately, Shui Wuji sent 2 voice transmission talismans one after another. In the past, this facial paralysis was either cold or arrogant. At least he had emotions. After coming out this time, he simply had no desire, and it made people's hair stand on end. He always had a dead face. "I've recently removed a bit of the seal as well. It just so happens that I know a bit of the situation." The facial paralysis situation was most likely because he had sealed his 7 emotions and 6 desires in order to break out of the seal as soon as possible. "Well, cough cough, little sister Jiu, I'm afraid you won't be able to sleep with him for the rest of your life. Little sister Jiu, big brother and Enfong were thrown to this damned place to train. Otherwise, big brother would have gone to see you. Take care of yourself." As the saying went, it was not easy to find a 2-legged toad, but there were plenty of 3-legged people. It was the other way around. Anyway, in short, don't be too sad. Because even if you are sad to death, I'm afraid that the facial paralysis will also be expressionless. Shui Wuji gave a big push. His main thought was to persuade Yun Chujio to let it go. Yun Chujio replied after a long while, "Since it's a seal, it can be broken. What should I do to break the seal he placed on me? I don't know either. After all, I've only broken a little bit of the seal. However, there's one thing you can rest assured about. That facial paralysis is like a living dead. He won't do anything behind your back. When I break some more seals, it'll definitely help you find a way." Yun Chujio put down the voice transmission talisman and looked at the expressionless Di Biming. "Did you seal your emotions?" Di Biming's expression did not change at all. He said indifferently, "Maybe. I don't remember." "Then how can you break the seal?" Di Biming did not say anything. It was unknown whether he did not know or did not want to answer. He asked with a calm expression, "Don't you have a question to ask me?" "What is it?" Yun Chujio was silent for a while, and finally said, "After you were frozen, Brother Wuji told me that you were injured in order to find my parents, and then your old illness acted up. As far as I know, the Yun family is not that powerful. Why were you injured?" "The Madame Yi in the Yun family's nunnery is fake. I was ambushed when I was tracking her whereabouts," Di Biming said indifferently. "A fake? Isn't my mother in the Yun family nunnery?" Yun Chujio grabbed Di Biming's sleeve and asked in disbelief. Even in her dreams, she didn't expect that the person in the Yi family nunnery was not Yilan. Then who was the person pretending to be Yilan? Di Biming frowned slightly when he saw Yun Chujio's hand grabbing his sleeve. Seeing this, Yun Chujio withdrew her hand embarrassedly and asked, "Then, was my mother taken away by someone? Where did she go?" The place you can't go to right now, so you don't have to ask anymore. I will naturally investigate the whereabouts of your father and mother and let your family reunite. The place I can't go to. What is that place? Is my father and my mother together? Di Biming glanced at Yun Chujio. You just need to wait. I will naturally settle this matter. You don't have to ask anymore. Yun Chujio heard Di Biming's words and could not suppress the anger and grievance in her heart. You always don't tell me anything and always make me wait. Is this fun? Don't you have no emotions? Then why are you doing this? Is it because you like me or because of duty and obligation? You don't let me touch you. Damn it, who was the one who shamelessly took advantage of me back then? If it wasn't for Go Weiba trouble, perhaps a few monkeys would have been born. Now, pretend to be serious and shameless. A faint ripple finally appeared in Di Biming's calm eyes. He said in a cold tone, this venerable self did this naturally for your own good. Why are you so agitated? This venerable self should like you, but this venerable self doesn't know what it means to like. Are you satisfied with such an answer? When Yun Chujio heard Di Biming's words, she was so angry that she was about to go crazy. Satisfied my ass. What does it mean to like me? She clenched her fists and looked at Di Biming. Do you not know what it means to like me? Di Biming looked at Yun Chujio, who was like a furious lion. His eyes were still indifferent. I don't know. Yun Chujio laughed coldly. Very well, I will teach you what it means to like me now. Di Biming was puzzled when his soft lips touched his. Di Biming pushed Yun Chujio away and took out a handkerchief to wipe his mouth. Then, he frowned unhappily. What are you doing? I have said that I don't like to be too close to people, and I don't like to be intimate with them. Yun Chujio bit her lips and looked at the handkerchief in Di Biming's hand. She raised her hand and slapped Di Biming hard on the face before rushing out of the room. Di Biming could have avoided Yun Chujio's slap, but when he saw the girl's red eyes, he was stunned for a moment and took the slap head-on. There was a slight anger on his calm face, but it quickly disappeared. He looked at the handkerchief in his hand again, and a black flame rose from his other hand, wanting to burn the handkerchief. But when the flame approached the handkerchief, he extinguished the flame in his hand again. He was stunned for a moment, and then put the handkerchief away. He searched through the memories in his mind. He had had this kind of skin-to-skin contact with her many times before. Why did he do this? Was it because he liked her that he wanted skin-to-skin contact? Although the touch of the girl just now did not make him particularly disgusted, he did not feel that this was something that he had to do. He pushed her away, and it made her so angry and sad. It was really unreasonable. Although he didn't have any emotions or desires, he remembered a few things. The first thing was to always be good to little Jiu. Be good to her. How could he be good to her? Wasn't it good to help her find her biological parents? Di Biming clearly couldn't understand why Yun Chujio was angry. He thought for a moment and said in a low voice, forget it. I will help her kill those ants from the Jingmu kingdom. This should be for her own good. Then, I can go and do the second thing. Di Biming thought of this and walked out of the house. Just as he was about to leave the city lord's mansion, he stopped. Should he tell her before leaving? Di Biming looked through his past memories. It seemed that he had to tell her every time he left. Moreover, it seemed like there had to be skin-to-skin contact. Di Biming frowned. Saying goodbye was fine, but skin-to-skin contact was fine. Otherwise, he might as well say goodbye and just leave. Di Biming took a few more steps forward. The image of Yun Chujio's angry and sad look appeared in his mind. He paused for a moment. Should he check her condition first and then decide whether he should say goodbye or not? Thinking of this, he released his spiritual sense and quickly locked onto the courtyard where Yun Chujio was. But, she was crying. The young girl lay on the bed, crying very sadly. As she cried, she cursed, pretty boy. You're a heartless man. I've always been thinking about you, yet you're doing this to me. Every time, I just change my personality, but this time, I've become a fucking monk. You made me look like a woman, a pervert, a wolf. I'm so angry. You're so shameless. You even used a handkerchief to wipe your mouth. Do you really despise me that much? Hooey. Back then, you shamelessly tried to take advantage of me, but now you're acting like a gentleman. Shameless. To think that I was so touched before. I didn't expect you to turn hostile and refuse to acknowledge me. You sealed your 7 emotions and 6 desires. Why didn't you fucking seal your little brother? Biming, little brother should be referring to that place, right? Biming's calm eyes were suddenly filled with a faint layer of anger. Without even thinking, he jumped into Yunchujia's courtyard. Then, with a bang, he smashed the door. Yunchujio, who was crying and cursing, was speechless. Didn't they say that there were no 7 emotions and 6 desires? What happened to peace and tranquility? What happened to no desires? Biming was also confused. Ever since he broke out of the ice, he had never lost control of his emotions. How could he do such a childish thing like knocking on the door? Biming quickly regained his cool expression and calmly said, I came here to tell you that I'm going to deal with the Jingmu Kingdom's army now, and then I'll go do other things. Yun Chujio was stunned at first, then she wiped her tears with her sleeve and fiercely said, Gigolo, I'm telling you, if you leave today, don't appear in front of me in the future. Gigolo. Biming's eyes flashed with a hint of displeasure. He said calmly, I'm just informing you. I'm not asking for your consent. Moreover, when I appear is my business. What does it have to do with you? Yun Chujio, fuck. This gigolo was going to heaven. Yun Chujio looked at the indifferent Biming and couldn't help but feel sad. She burst into tears, you must be fake. My gigolo would never treat me like this. Give me back my gigolo. Biming looked at the crying Yun Chujio expressionlessly. Did he say something wrong? Did she have to be so sad? He spoke again, I am not fake. I will treat you well and like you. It is hard to understand why you are crying like this. Yun Chujio was even sadder when she heard what he said. She cried and said, bullshit. If my gigolo saw me crying, he would definitely feel sorry for me and would definitely comfort me. But what about you? You are clearly indifferent. Only a ghost would believe that you like me. Distressed? Biming placed his hand on his chest. His heart was still beating slowly and calmly. What was the feeling of heartache? Biming wanted to turn around and leave, but when he thought of the deep message in his mind, you must treat little Gio well, he frowned slightly. Then, he took a few steps forward and walked to Yun Chujia's bed. Don't cry. Your face is full of tears and snot. Don't you think it's very dirty? After Biming said that, he looked at Yun Chujio indifferently. This should be coaxing, right? Yun Chujio almost fainted from anger. He despised her for being dirty. This guy did not care about Biming's bullshit that was sealed. He suddenly grabbed the hem of Biming's robe and wiped away his tears and snot, then, he looked at him and said, now, you are dirty too. Gigolo. Biming looked at the horrible sleeve and clenched his hand. An ice blade instantly formed in his hand. Yun Chujio was a little scared. Did this gigolo want to kill her? Only then did this guy realize that although the body of the person in front of him was Biming's and the soul was also Biming's, he didn't have Biming's feelings. She was a little stupid to provoke him like this. Speaking of which, was it too late to regret now? If she died under the sword of her lover, would it make people laugh their heads off? When Yun Chujio saw that Biming had already raised the ice blade in his hand, she could not care less about his moral integrity anymore. She said pitifully, Prince Charming, please calm down. I was wrong. I should not have tarnished your noble and spotless clothes. Please spare me. Di Biming looked at Yun Chujio with a strange look and then raised his ice blade. Yun Chujio saw that he was really going to make a move and thought to herself that only a fool would wait for death. This guy rushed to the door and said angrily, "Don't go too far. Although you don't have any emotions and desires now, I am your fiancé. If you kill me, you will be murdering your wife." Di Biming frowned slightly. He waved his ice blade and cut the piece of cloth that was dirted by Yun Chujio. Then, he said indifferently, "Do you think I want to kill you?" "I won't kill you." Yun Chujio was stunned for a moment. Then, she finally reacted. Damn it, she had scared herself to such an extent. It was so embarrassing. Di Biming felt that this little girl was really unreasonable. It was better to leave as soon as possible. Hence, he did not care about Yun Chujio's reaction. He lifted his leg and was about to leave. "Hey, are you not going to kill me no matter what I do?" Yun Chujio reached out to block the door and asked. Di Biming nodded without any hesitation. "That's right. I won't kill you no matter what you do. Even if you want to kill me, I won't kill you." Yun Chujio's heartbroken heart was immediately comforted. Damn it, this gigolo still had a conscience. However, since he wouldn't kill her, what was there to be afraid of? Who cared if he had 7 emotions and 6 desires or not? Even if it was an ice sculpture, she still wanted to make him hot, passionate, and fiery. Di Biming looked at the little girl with tears on her face, but there was a hint of craftiness in his eyes. He felt that his heart seemed to be beating a little faster. Di Biming frowned. He must be angry because his clothes were dirty. He calmed down a little and immediately returned to his calm state of mind. "Now that you are done with your questions, move aside. I will go and get rid of the Jingmu Kingdom's army," Di Biming said coldly. "My dear, how do you want to get rid of them? Although you are pretty awesome, there are tens of thousands of them." Yun Chujio asked with a smile. Di Biming frowned again when he heard Yun Chujio call him "my dear," but he still answered, "I will go and kill Emperor Mu Xian. Then they will naturally retreat without a fight." Yun Chujio showed a look of admiration. "My Prince Charming, you are really wise and wise. You actually thought of such a good idea. My admiration for you is like a torrential river. Are you done? Next time, when you talk, just pick something useful and say it. Don't talk about this nonsense. It's a waste of time," Di Biming said coldly. Yun Chujio, fuck. How could she take down this kind of person who refused to listen to both hard and soft tactics? This guy rolled his eyes and sighed. "Alright, you can go then. You can do whatever you need to do. I'm fine." Di Biming nodded slightly. "It's good that you're like this. Don't be unreasonable in the future." Yun Chujio nodded obediently. "My Prince Charming, what you said makes sense. I'll listen to you from now on." Di Biming nodded lightly and walked out of the house. Just as he was about to leave, he heard a loud bang from inside the house. He frowned and thought for a moment before he turned around and returned to the house. He saw Yun Chujio curled up on the ground. Her forehead was covered in bean-sized beads of sweat as she bit her lips. Di Biming felt as though his entire heart was throbbing. He quickly picked up Yun Chujio who was on the ground and asked, "What's wrong?" "No, nothing. You can go. Don't worry about me," Yun Chujio said weakly. Her voice was so weak that it sounded like she was going to die at any moment. Di Biming reached out and pressed on Yun Chujio's pulse. The pulse was extremely chaotic. He frowned and searched through his memories. He said coldly, "Is it because of that Guai Chao?" The Guai Chao in his dantian was about to collapse. Oh God! Oh God! It was a good grass. This matter had nothing to do with it. Yun Chujio said with difficulty, "It's not Guai Chao, it's my heart that hurts so much. My heart might be broken. You don't need to care about me. You can go and do your work." Heartache. Could it be a heart disease? Could it be a heart disease? You didn't have such a problem in the past. Di Baiming put Yun Chujio on the bed and said with puzzlement. Yun Chujio hummed and said, "Maybe it was just the incubation period in the past, but now it's acting up. I'm feeling a little emotional today, so I'm having a mental illness. I'm really fine. You should go. It's good that I'm dead, so I won't drag you down." Di Baiming felt a wave of anger spread from the bottom of his heart. This was a very strange emotion, and it was even angrier than before. He said coldly, "Don't say die again. This venerable self doesn't allow you to die." A few crocodile tears flowed out of the corner of Yun Chujio's eyes. She said weakly, "I don't want to die either, but my heart hurts, it hurts." Di Baiming quickly held her in his arms. He checked her pulse and asked questions, and even beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. He Xinjiu wanted to laugh, but she was afraid that her plan would be ruined. She could only continue to groan, "I don't know why, but I seem to be better." Di Baiming thought to himself, maybe it was because of his special constitution that he hugged her, which made her feel better. Thinking of this, he pulled Yun Chujio into his arms and asked, "How do you feel now?" Yun Chujio hummed, "I seem to be better than before, it's really strange." Hearing this, Di Baiming felt that his guess was right, so he hugged Yun Chujio tightly. A certain Jiu was very proud of herself. "Aren't you a germaphobe? Don't you dislike physical contact with people? Why are you hugging her now? What bullshit doesn't have 7 emotions and 6 desires?" Even if it was really sealed, she would still use the prehistoric power to untie it. These few days, He Xinjiu did not sleep well at all. She was crying and cursing again and again. At first, she was still thinking about Di Baiming, but gradually, she fell asleep. Di Baiming saw that her breathing had calmed down, so he put her down and covered her with the blanket. Di Baiming turned around and wanted to leave, but when he thought of Yun Chujio's painful look, he thought, what if she woke up and fell ill again? It was better to wait until he confirmed that she was fine before leaving. Yun Chujio slept until evening. When she woke up, she saw Di Baiming sitting on the chair expressionlessly, like a statue, and the kind that was carved out of 10,000-year-old ice. When he saw Yun Chujio open her eyes, he asked, "Are you better?" Yun Chujio then remembered that she was pretending to be sick. She squeezed out a few tears and said, "Io, my heart hurts." Di Baiming frowned, "Are there people who are proficient in medical skills among those people? Find them to help you. Don't delay the treatment." Yun Chujio was afraid that she would be exposed, so she quickly said, "All right, it's better now. I won't die. You should leave." She saw that Di Baiming's brows were furrowed even more tightly. She was afraid that he would be suspicious, so she quickly added, "I'm fine. There are a few doctors, but they are all good at treating external injuries. I'm afraid that they won't be able to treat my illness. Prince Charming, you really don't need to care about me. You should leave. I'm used to carrying everything on my own. I can endure the pain even if it kills me." Di Baiming felt his heart suffocate. Was he used to carrying everything on his own? Di Baiming did not speak for a long time. He searched through many of his past memories and realized that this little girl was right. Although he was her fiancé, he did not seem to have done anything for her. Many times, this little girl was the one who had braved through danger. He seemed to understand why he had liked this little girl in the past. She seemed to be very shameless and weak. Di Baiming was silent for a while and then said, "If it's really a mental illness, then you can't be too worried and tired. I will help you get rid of Emperor Mu Xian. You can just rest in peace." Yun Chujio's eyes were instantly filled with tears. She sobbed and said, I know. Although I really want you to stay with me, I know you have something to do. You can go. I can do it alone. Di Baiming looked at Yun Chujio, who was crying pitifully, and said in a gentler tone, "It's good that you're like this. They'll stay with you in the future after I solve the problem." After Di Baiming finished speaking, he turned around and was about to leave when Yun Chujio's low sobs came from behind him. The sadness that he endured made the suffocation in his heart even stronger. He took a few more steps and finally turned around. He saw that the little girl was holding onto the blanket tightly and burying her entire body under the blanket. The blanket was trembling non-stop. It was obvious that she did not want him to hear, so she hid in the quilt and cried. Di Baiming's legs suddenly felt heavy. He couldn't take another step out no matter what. He was silent for a long time. He clenched his fist, took out the voice transmission talisman and gave a few instructions. Then he turned around and returned to the bed. "Don't cry. I will accompany you for a few more days." Yun Chujio's little head poked out from under the quilt. Her eyes were as red as a rabbit's, but they were sparkling inside. "Really, you didn't lie to me?" Di Baiming could not open his eyes because of Yun Chujio's sparkling eyes. He said indifferently, "This venerable self disdains lying." Yun Chujio hugged Di Baiming's waist and muttered, "Although I know it's wrong to pester you like this, I just want to keep you by my side so that my heart won't hurt so much." Di Baiming's body tensed up. He raised his hand to push Yun Chujio away, but his hand froze in the air when he heard her words. Forget it, she was a patient now, so he would allow her to be a little more presumptuous. A crafty look flashed across Yun Chujio's eyes. "Little brat, even if you turn into a fucking wooden block, I will make you an honest wife's slave." Just as Yun Chujio was feeling pleased with herself, the voice transmission talisman in her storage ring started to vibrate. This fellow cursed in his heart, "Who the fuck is so tactless? What voice transmission talisman is this time?" However, she was worried that it was related to the war, so she reluctantly let go of Di Baiming's waist. She took it out and saw that it was sent by Xue Wuji. Yun Chujio sent her spiritual sense in, and Xue Wuji's loud voice was heard from inside. "Little sister Jiu, I really admire you. You actually made that expressionless man change his mind. How did you do it? What idea?" Yun Chujio asked in confusion. "That expressionless man just sent me a voice transmission talisman and asked Feng and I to kill Emperor Mu Xian immediately. He had planned to leave us in a horrible place for a few months. Little sister Jiu, you are really my savior." Chapter 3396 Empress Zhang. Yun Chujio's heart was slightly sweet. No wonder the gigolo said that he would stay with her for a few days. It turned out that he had left the assassination of Emperor Mu to Xue Wuji and Feng. However, Brother Wuji, can you and Feng kill Emperor Mu with your spiritual power? Little sister Jiu, I am now the one who has broken a part of the seal. Although I am not as crazy as that expressionless freak, I am still very powerful, okay? You haven't told brother yet. How did you make that zombie change his mind? I didn't even manage to change his expression when I tried to court death. How did you do it? Xue Wuji asked. Yun Chujio's face turned red. Damn it, could she tell Xue Wuji that she sacrificed her looks? This guy shamelessly said, "Brother Wuji, my idol loves me to the bone, so when he sees me, he can't help but love me." Yun Chujio waited for a long time, but Xue Wuji did not reply. This guy did not care and kept the voice transmission talisman. Just as she was about to continue taking advantage of him, she heard Di Baiming say, "Get a few military doctors to come over and take a look. Don't delay the treatment." Yun Chujio blinked her eyes, picked up the voice transmission talisman and said a few words to Prime Minister Sima. Then, she looked at Di Baiming pitifully, "Prince Charming, can you hug me? I'm a little cold." This fellow even trembled a few times as he spoke. Di Baiming hesitated for a moment, but he still walked to the bedside and hugged Yun Chujio and her in his arms. Then, he used his spiritual power to help her warm up. He Xingjia's face was flushed red as she cursed in her heart. This gigolo was too honest. Luckily, she had the Gui Chao's beads to cool her down. Otherwise, she would have died from the heat. On the other side, Prime Minister Sima received His Majesty's voice transmission talisman and was dumbfounded. After being stunned for a while, he called over a few military doctors and ordered, "I will bring you to His Majesty's treatment. You will tell him that His Majesty has a mental illness and there is no way to cure it. He can only recuperate slowly. Come and read on our website Wuxia World Site. Thanks. Moreover, you cannot have too big of a fluctuation in your emotions. Otherwise, your lives will be in danger. Do you understand? If you do not follow His Majesty's instructions, His Majesty will destroy your entire family." The few military doctors had a face full of fear and trepidation. They immediately nodded in agreement. After a while, Prime Minister Sima led the few military doctors to Yun Chujia's courtyard. Prime Minister Sima looked at the broken pieces of the door on the floor and saw that Yun Chujia's eyes were as red as a rabbit's. He could not help but wonder, what was going on? Their emperor was so thick-skinned that he actually cried like this. He glanced at the man sitting by the bed, but he did not dare to look at him again. This person's strength was really terrifying. The cold air on his body was simply freezing. He did not know how their emperor endured it. "This is my fiancé. You can call him Empress D." Yun Chujio felt Di Baiming's sharp gaze and changed her words, "Just call him Your Majesty." Prime Minister Sima and the other doctors quickly bowed, "Greetings, Your Majesty." Di Baiming hummed and said, "Come over and take a look at her." One of the doctors was about to take her pulse when Di Baiming frowned and took out the handkerchief and placed it on Yun Chujia's wrist. Yun Chujia's heart skipped a beat. No matter how this pretty boy changed, his jealousy did not change. In the future, she could use this to stimulate him. After the few military doctors checked his pulse, their expressions were a little solemn. One of the elders said, "His Majesty's illness should be a mental illness. Currently, there is no good way. We can only recuperate quietly. It is best not to have any violent fluctuations in our emotions. Otherwise, the illness will worsen in the mild cases and the life of the severe cases will be in danger." Chapter 3397, Don't think about these messy things. Di Baiming's tone was a little gloomy as he asked, "Is there really no way to completely cure it?" The few military doctors were frightened by Di Baiming's imposing manner, but when they thought of what Prime Minister Sima said earlier, they still said, "Lord Bing, we are lacking in knowledge and are good at external injuries, so if you are worried, you can look for someone else to take a look." Yun Chujio sighed, "Prince Charming, don't make things difficult for them. I know my own body. I will live as long as I can." When Di Baiming heard Yun Chujia's words, his heart suddenly throbbed and the chill in his body spread out. Prime Minister Sima and the few military doctors were so scared that they trembled. Especially Prime Minister Sima, he was complaining in his heart. If this lord knew that they had lied to him in the future, he would definitely not spare them. "Your Majesty, you are courting death. What kind of illness are you pretending to have?" Yun Chujio saw that Prime Minister Sima and the few military doctors were trembling like leaves in the wind and waved her hand, "You guys can go down and guard the city well." Prime Minister Sima and the others quickly scrambled out. Damn it, if they stayed any longer, they would definitely take the initiative to confess. This lord was too scary. Yun Chujio was about to say something when she heard Di Baiming say, "This venerable one will help you find a famous doctor. Even if it's a heart disease, it shouldn't be a difficult disease to treat. Also, after your body is slightly better, cultivate well for this venerable one. As long as you cultivate to the peak of spiritual link, you will be able to withstand this venerable one's spiritual power." When the time comes, even if you can't find a famous doctor, this venerable one can use spiritual power to help you repair your heart. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Yun Chujio secretly counted with her fingers. She was only at the 5th level of the spirit illusion realm. It was still early for her to cultivate to the peak of the spiritual link realm. During this period, she could continue to fool the pretty boy. Therefore, she nodded solemnly. Don't worry, my Prince Charming. I haven't lived long enough. I will definitely cultivate well. Oh right, my Prince Charming, since you can use your spiritual power to repair my heart, then when the time comes, can you also pull out the dog's tail from my dantian? Go Weiba asked Guai Chao, who was in his dantian, felt as though he was cursing a dog in his heart. He was really unlucky today. Not only did he help to take the blame, he even wanted to get rid of it now. The dantian is different from other places. Once something goes wrong, your cultivation will be completely wasted, so it's better to find another way. Di Baiming said in a deep voice. Yun Chujio pursed her lips. Forget it, if you can't get rid of it, then so be it. Anyway, the dog's tail is still quite obedient. Moreover, you don't want to have sex with me now, so it doesn't matter if I get rid of it or not. Guai Chao heaved a sigh of relief when it heard Yun Chujio's words. This black-hearted little girl had a conscience. Although it had done a few bad things in the beginning, it had already turned over a new leaf, all right. Di Baiming's eyes darkened slightly. This venerable self will think of a way to get rid of Guai Chao for you. Also, you have to focus on your cultivation instead of thinking about things that don't exist. The reason why you are so weak is because your mind is focused on these meaningless things. Yun Chujio was stunned for a moment before she understood. Di Baiming was referring to the matter of having sex. Her heart was filled with hatred. Good, very good. Gigolo, pretend that you don't have any desires. When you want to have sex with me in the future, if I don't torture you until you vomit blood, my name will not be Yun Chujio. Yun Chujio squeezed out a smile. Yes, my Prince Charming, you are right. From now on, I will focus solely on cultivation and will not think about these messy things anymore. Chapter 3398 was probably due to guilt. Di Baiming nodded his head in satisfaction. Very good. Although your personality is a little naughty, at least you can listen to my opinions. It's not bad. Yun Chujio silently chanted a few times in her heart before saying, I will always listen to your words in the future, Prince Charming. Oh right, Prince Charming, when did you break the ice seal? What are your plans next? Less than 10 days ago. I have my own plans for the future. I will accompany you for a few days before leaving, Di Baiming said calmly. Yun Chujio saw that Di Baiming had returned to his ice-sculpted face, so she did not continue to question him. However, this guy counted with his fingers. This pretty boy probably came to find her as soon as he broke the ice seal, so he had a conscience. At this moment, Yun Chujio's stomach growled. This guy just remembered that she had not eaten anything for a day. Di Baiming glanced at her. Hungry? Yun Chujio nodded happily. Even though the gigolo had lost his 7 emotions and 6 desires, he still cared about her. If he let her eat later, she would think of a way to let him feed her. Just as he was thinking happily, he saw Di Baiming take out a porcelain bottle, poured out a fasting pill from it, and handed it to her. Eat it. Yun Chujio, eat your head. You actually want me to eat fasting pills? Yun Chujio looked at the fasting pill in Di Baiming's hand with disdain. I don't want to eat this thing. I want to eat warm food. Di Baiming was slightly displeased. How can a cultivator be greedy for food? Besides, eating those dishes will waste a lot of time. If you have that time, can you use it to cultivate? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Yun Chujio looked at Di Baiming with a blank face. Di Baiming thought that she had been convinced by him, so he raised his hand and stuffed the fasting pill into Yun Chujia's mouth. Yun Chujio reacted and spat out the fasting pill. I don't care. I want to eat warm food. If you insist on me eating this fasting pill, I'd rather starve. Di Baiming looked at the fasting pill on the ground and then at the indignant Yun Chujio. A hint of displeasure flashed across his eyes. As you wish. It's getting late, you should rest. After Di Baiming finished speaking, he turned around and left the room. Yun Chujio was so angry that she gritted her teeth and cursed silently. Then, she hurriedly took out the food and started eating. Damn it, no matter how angry she was, she could not treat her stomach badly. She was the one who was starving and uncomfortable. Di Baiming pushed open the room next door. He used the cleaning spell to clean up the room before lying on the bed. He originally did not want to care about Hei Shinjo next door, but after thinking about it, he released his spiritual sense to check. He thought that the little girl would be so angry that she would cry again. He did not expect that the little girl's mouth was full of oil, she was eating a chicken drumstick in her hand. Di Baiming, he shook his head. No wonder his spiritual power was so low and he was so greedy for food. He had to find a way to correct it. Otherwise, he would leave Towering Sky Continent soon. Her safety was a problem. Di Baiming felt that his emotions had been calm ever since he broke the ice seal, but today, he felt that his emotions were constantly fluctuating along with that little girl. He could not help but frown. It must be because he felt guilty toward her. That was why it was like this. Yes, it must be like this. As the night deepened, Di Baiming felt slightly sleepy. While he was half asleep, he sensed the sound of someone moving in the next room. Chapter 3399 Appreciating Beauty, right? Di Baiming frowned slightly. Could it be that she had gotten up to drink water? Just as Di Baiming was about to use his spiritual sense to check, he realized that the footsteps were approaching his room. Then, he realized that his room door had been carefully pushed open. Yun Chujia's little head looked at the door. When she saw that Di Baiming was lying flat on the bed and did not make any movements, she quietly entered the room and closed the door. This guy tiptoed to the side of Di Baiming's bed. Just as he was about to climb up, he saw Di Baiming open his eyes and looked at her like a cold star. What are you doing? This guy's mind went blank for a moment. He was discovered climbing into a man's bed in the middle of the night. Wasn't it awkward? However, this guy's skin was unusually thick. He said pitifully, "The door of my room was smashed by you, so I was a little scared and wanted to sleep with you." Di Baiming was slightly stunned. Only then did he remember that he had indeed smashed the door of the room next door. He sat up and got off the bed. "In that case, you can sleep here. This venerable self will sleep next door. Prince Charming, can you stay with me? I haven't been able to sleep well these few days because I'm always worried that the people of the Jingmu Kingdom will catch up with me. I only feel safer with you by my side." Yun Chujio said pitifully. Di Baiming originally wanted to refuse, but when he saw Yun Chujio's watery eyes, he said in the end, "In that case, you can sleep. I'll sit on the chair and watch you sleep." Yun Chujio immediately smiled brightly and nodded vigorously, "My Prince Charming, I knew you were the best to me." Di Baiming was a little absent-minded. Was this treating her well? Since she thought it was good, he would just watch her fall asleep for the next few days. Yun Chujio climbed onto the bed with both hands and feet. She first laid down at the place where Di Baiming had laid down for a while, and then she climbed onto the bed and lay on her side. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Di Baiming asked in confusion, "Why are you doing this?" Yun Chujio's little face was flushed red. She used her claws to point at the place where Di Baiming had laid down, "Because there is your aura here, my Prince Charming. I just laid down for a while, and my body was stained with your aura. I feel very happy and at ease." Di Biming suddenly had an indescribable feeling in his heart. It was as if there was some sour and sweet feeling. He was very repulsed by this kind of unfamiliar emotion. His face was covered with a layer of frost. It's getting late. Hurry up and sleep. Yun Chujiu saw Di Biming's sudden change in expression and could not help but curse in her heart. Crazy. He turned hostile just like that. Only I can tolerate this kind of crazy. This guy had slept for the whole afternoon. How could he sleep now? Therefore, he looked at Di Biming, who was sitting on the chair without blinking. TSK, TSK. The more he looked, the more interesting he became. Especially that stuffy and flirtatious look that made people feel itchy. Di Biming could not ignore the hot and stinging look that almost ate him up. He opened his eyes and said, "What are you looking at with such a shifty look? If you don't want to sleep, go back to your own room." Sneaky eyes. He Xinjiu almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He was clearly looking at her with his bright eyes. All right. Prince Charming, I'm looking at you. I think you're getting more and more handsome. There's nothing wrong with appreciating beauty, right? Yun Chujiu said pitifully. Di Biming looked at her indifferently. There's nothing wrong with appreciating beauty, but how can you explain it when you're drooling while looking at it? Chapter 3400. The original body had lost his memory. Yun Chujiu blinked her eyes and said seriously, "This is because I didn't eat dinner tonight, so I couldn't help but drool when I saw the delicious food. This is understandable." Di Biming didn't eat dinner. Could it be that what he saw with his spiritual sense was just an illusion? How could a person who had eaten half a roast chicken still say that he didn't eat dinner? I'll give you two choices. 1. Close your eyes and sleep. The other, I'll go to another room. You can sleep here by yourself. Di Biming said coldly. Yun Chujiu pursed her lips. I'm going to sleep now. You must not leave me alone. I'm timid and I'm afraid. Di Biming looked at her meaningfully. He did not say anything. He turned around and took out a book to read. Yun Chujiu cursed in her heart. Bah! Who cares about looking at you? If you don't want to read, then don't read. Yun Chujiu turned over, closed her eyes, and began to force herself to sleep. Unfortunately, she slept too much during the day. Moreover, this fellow had been scheming about little Jiu in his heart, so he could not fall asleep no matter what. This fellow rolled his eyes and began to groan, "It's so cold. I'm so cold." As he spoke, he shrunk his whole body into the quilt and kept shivering. Di Biming frowned slightly and did not move. However, Yun Chujiu's moaning gradually turned into a low sob. He still got up and went to the bedside. After hesitating for a while, he hugged Yun Chujiu and the quilt in his arms and used his spiritual power to help her warm up. Yun Chujiu poked her head out from under the blanket and said with a stubborn expression, "I don't need you to care about me. Just let me fend for myself." Di Biming glanced at her and did not say anything. He did not want to care about her, but for some reason, he could not turn a blind eye to her crying. "SOB, SOB, return my gigolo to me. My gigolo will not be angry at me. My gigolo is obedient to me. My gigolo tries his best to please me. My gigolo listens to everything I say." Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Di Biming said plainly, "Little Jiu, you have to understand one thing. I don't have 7 emotions and 6 desires, but I don't have amnesia." Yun Chujiu, this guy blinked his eyes guiltily, "No matter what, my gigolo will hug me to sleep and sing me a lullaby. Do you know it?" "No." Di Biming looked through the memories and felt that he was an idiot. He actually sang her a lullaby. Yun Chujiu pursed her lips and did not say anything else. However, she thought to herself, "Pretty boy, just you wait. The cause that you planted and the bitter fruit that you bear, you will swallow it even if you cry in the future." She did not know whether it was because it was late at night or because she was carried by Di Biming, but this fellow finally yawned a few times and fell into a deep sleep. Di Biming saw that she was asleep and placed her on the side of the bed. Just as he was about to leave, he noticed that Yun Chujia's hand was tightly holding onto his clothes. He frowned and cut off the piece of cloth, then turned around and got off the bed. Di Biming placed a futon on the ground and began to meditate. "I don't want you to leave. Prince Charming, you can't die." Di Biming opened his eyes and looked at the bed. He saw that the little girl had pushed the blanket away. Her hands were waving unconsciously, and tears were flowing down from the corners of her eyes. However, even so, she was still holding the piece of cloth tightly. Di Biming felt a pain in his heart. He almost subconsciously walked to the side of the bed and held Yun Chujia's hand. "It's okay, I'm here." Chapter 3401, The Jingmu Kingdom attacked again. Yun Chujio was like a drowning person who had found a floating board. She held Di Biming's arm in her arms. There were tears in the corners of her eyes, but her lips curled up into a curve. Di Biming's bent posture was really uncomfortable. He gritted his teeth and could only lie on the outside of the bed. In her sleep, Yun Chujio seemed to feel a heat source. She let go of Di Biming's arm and then nestled into Di Biming's arms. Di Biming's body stiffened. He really did not like to be so close to others. However, he could not bear to push Yun Chujio away. He lowered his head and saw that Yun Chujio was sleeping soundly. It was as if the nightmare from before had passed. He hugged her tightly. If he moved slightly, she would move along with him. She would even moan. Di Biming had no choice but to let her hug him. He thought that he would be so uncomfortable that he would open his eyes until daybreak. He did not expect that he would also slowly fall asleep. The next morning, Yun Chujio opened her eyes and found herself in Di Biming's embrace. She could not help but be stunned. Wasn't this pretty boy supposed to have no desires? Why was he hugging her? "Aren't you cold now? Why aren't you letting go of me?" Di Biming's cold voice sounded above her head. Yun Chujio pouted in her heart. It was clearly him who was hugging her, all right. However, she still had to give him a way out. "Hence," she said weakly, "thank you for last night. My body is getting weaker and weaker. Please forgive me for offending you." Hearing Yun Chujio's polite words, Di Biming couldn't help but feel a little depressed, but he couldn't tell what the reason was. At this moment, the sound transmission talisman in Yun Chujio's storage ring rang. It was sent by Prime Minister Sima. "Your Majesty, the Jingmu Kingdom's army is heading towards Puyang City. They should be preparing to attack the city again." Yun Chujio's heart tightened. She directly climbed over Di Biming's body, then got off the bed and put on her shoes. "Prince Charming, the Jingmu Kingdom is attacking the city again. I have to go take a look. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site." Thanks. Before Di Biming could react, this guy had already rushed out. Di Biming recalled the touch just now and was slightly stunned. After a moment, he stood up and frowned slightly. Then, he rushed towards the city wall. When Yun Chujio reached the city wall, the Jingwood Kingdom's army had already arrived at the city wall aggressively. The crown prince, Jing Jiahong, was killed. Emperor Mu Xian was furious. He gave Shang Liangxin and the others their lives. Either they killed Yun Chujio and her wild man, or they destroyed their entire family. Shang Liangxin and the others had no choice. Although they knew that Di Biming was not to be trifled with, they had no choice but to force themselves to attack the city again. They lied to themselves and comforted themselves. Although that wild man was powerful, it was difficult for him to fight against 4 hands with 2 fists. They had tens of thousands of people, so why should they be afraid of him? The reason why the crown prince was killed by him was that the crown prince was not on guard. That wild man was nothing special. When Shang Liang saw that there was only Yun Chujiu on the city wall and there was no sign of that wild man, he immediately became more confident. He reckoned that the wild man had already left. The heavens were really helping their Jingmu kingdom. Yun Chujiu, I advise you to surrender immediately. This way, you and your subordinates' lives can still be saved. Otherwise, don't blame us for not being polite. Shang Liangxin said arrogantly. Yun Chujiu curled her lips. Are you stupid? Don't you know that my fiancé is very powerful? Even your bullshit crown prince was killed by my fiancé. How dare you come here to court death? You guys are really stupid. Bah! Bitch! That wild man was just lucky. You dogs, men, and women, don't even think about living. Shang Liangxin's words came to an abrupt end, because there was an ice arrow stuck between his brows, and he had actually died. Chapter 3402, You Will Always Live in My Heart. The army of the Jingmu kingdom was originally lacking in confidence. Now that Shang Liangxin had been killed, they were in a mess. It was only then that they saw the man standing beside the female emperor and looking at them coldly. Everyone felt a chill run down their spines. They did not dare to resist at all. The senior generals looked at each other. They did not believe that Emperor Mu Xian would kill them all. This man was unfathomable. They were no match for him. It was better to go back and make a long-term plan. Therefore, under the leadership of the senior generals, the army of the Jingmu kingdom disappeared without a trace. Prime Minister Sima was dumbfounded. Damn, this fiancé of His Majesty was really powerful. He actually scared off tens of thousands of the Jingmu kingdom's army the moment he showed up. Yun Chujiu felt a little bitter and proud at the same time. Damn, when did I become so awesome? Just as he was thinking about it, he heard Di Baiming say coldly, "Follow me back." Although his voice was no different from usual, Yun Chujiu could still hear some anger in it. This guy couldn't help but feel a little confused. What did I do to provoke him? However, this fellow had always been tactful. After giving a few words to Prime Minister Sima, he followed Di Baiming and left the city wall. Along the way, Di Baiming did not say anything. Yun Chujiu could not figure out what this crazy person meant, so she did not say anything. The two of them walked silently into the city lord's mansion. After entering the house, Di Baiming sat on a chair. Yun Chujiu was about to sit down when she heard Di Baiming say coldly, "Do you think I'm dead? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site." Thanks. Yun Chujiu was so shocked by his sudden words that she almost sat on the ground. She said weakly, "Prince Charming, where did you start? How can I think you're dead? You will always live in my heart." Di Baiming, Yun Chujiu felt that something was wrong after she said that. She smiled embarrassedly, then, she said, "Prince Charming, what did I do to offend you? Is it because I slept in your house, your bed, and your man yesterday?" Di Baiming's frown deepened. What did he mean by sleeping with his man? If he wanted to sleep with her, he should be the one sleeping with her, okay? When Di Baiming thought of this, he could not help but be distracted and did not speak for a long time. When Yun Chujiu saw that Di Baiming did not speak, her heart could not help but beat faster. Could it be that the gigolo had found out that she was pretending to be sick? She did not give herself away, did she? Originally, this mental illness was very serious when it flared up. Usually, it was as if nothing had happened. He should not have noticed any flaws, right? Or was it because she pretended to ask for a hug yesterday? That shouldn't be the case. He was afraid that he would confess if he said anything wrong, so he sat on the chair silently. Di Baiming came back to his senses and turned to look at a certain Jiu who was pretending to be calm. He squeezed out a sentence from between his teeth, "Don't try to be strong if you're not feeling well." Yun Chujiu pondered over the meaning of this sentence and finally understood. Was the pretty boy angry because she had abandoned him and went to fight alone? Did this mean that he was feeling sorry for her? When Yun Chuzhou thought of this, a hint of sweetness rose from the bottom of her heart. She held her chin and blinked her starry eyes at Di Biming. Prince Charming, are you saying this because you are worried about my health? Are you feeling sorry for me? Chapter 3403 The unlucky Meng Yanshou. Di Biming's expression froze, and then he said coldly, don't think about these things all day long. Since you're already alive and kicking, hurry up and start cultivating. Yun Chuzhou pursed her lips. Damn it, she hated it the most. Prince Charming, I haven't eaten breakfast yet. I'll start cultivating after eating. Di Biming took out a porcelain bottle containing fasting pills and poured out a fasting pill. Seeing the look of disdain on Yun Chuzhou's face, he had no choice but to put it in his mouth. Di Biming gave her a look of self-care, then turned around and went to the room next door. Yun Chuzhou slowly began to eat breakfast. She estimated that there were still 5 or 6 days left before Emperor Nanxian and the others could take down the other 6 vassal states. When that time came, it would be time to start a war with the Jingmu kingdom. After taking down the Jingmu kingdom, even the other second-tier countries would not dare to provoke the 4-tier alliance so easily. She would be able to live in peace for a period of time. Although she knew that Di Biming was very powerful now, Shui Wuji had once said that Di Biming still had enemies to deal with. It was obvious that he could not stay by her side forever, so she had to rely on herself. After eating breakfast, Yun Chuzhou strolled out of the house and went straight to Di Biming's room. Di Biming continued to cultivate with his eyes closed, ignoring this guy. This guy walked around the house, then sat down cross-legged next to Di Biming, closed his eyes and began to cultivate. Di Biming tried his best to ignore Yun Chuzhou's influence on him, but no matter what, there was still a ripple in his heart. He frowned, how could this be? Di Biming tried his best to calm his emotions before continuing to cultivate. Soon, a day had passed. Hei Xinjiu stood up and stretched. Then, she looked at Di Biming, who was still meditating expressionlessly. She said with a smile, idle, it's time for dinner. Don't eat the fasting pills today. I'll roast meat for you. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Di Biming didn't even open his eyes. He said indifferently, no need. You can eat it yourself. Yun Chuzhou did not say anything. She hopped out of the room. Very soon, Di Biming, who was meditating in the room, smelled the aroma of the roasted meat. Since the room he was in did not have a door, the aroma was exceptionally strong. Di Biming shook his head slightly. In his opinion, the roasted meat was no different from the fasting pills. Moreover, it took a lot of time and effort. It was really asking for trouble. Just as he was thinking about it, he heard Yun Chuzhou's smiling voice from the door, Xiao Hei, curly hair, the roasted meat today is not bad, right? Master, I haven't eaten the roasted meat that you personally cooked for a long time. The roasted meat is sizzling and oozing oil. It's really too fragrant. Xiao Hanio said with his green bean-like eyes. Meng Yanshou was chewing the roasted meat in its mouth and said vaguely, I feel that I'm really blissful now. There's meat to eat, and there's a story to read. Even deities wouldn't change on days like this. Di Biming couldn't help but sneer in his heart. What kind of master would raise a spiritual pet? The spiritual pets that little Jiu raised were also foodies who didn't want to improve themselves. Yun Chuzhou gave Meng Yanshou a look, and Meng Yanshou gritted his teeth with a bitter look. He said slyly, little fairy, I read those storybooks. Once a woman becomes the female emperor or something, she will marry many male concubines. How many do you plan to marry? Meng Yanshou's heart was like a beeping dog. This little girl was really too mean. Why didn't she let that ugly bird ask such a question? Why did she have to let it ask? Although the fiend in the room no longer had 7 emotions and 6 desires, even a man wouldn't be able to tolerate his woman having several men, right? It already had a premonition that a storm was coming. Chapter 3404 Yun Chujio looked at Meng Yanshou approvingly and then said faintly, I haven't thought about this yet. People say that there are 3 palaces, 6 courtyards, and 72 concubines. I can't be too little, right? Otherwise, people will look down on me. As soon as Yun Chujio finished her words, Xiao Hanio and Meng Yanshou felt like they were going to be frozen into popsicles. However, their master, who was courting death, continued to say, there are many types of handsome men. If I marry one of each type, there should be at least dozens of them. Fortunately, I have money. Even if I marry more, I can still afford to raise them. Whoosh! Whoosh! Xiao Hanio and Meng Yanshou were thrown out of the yard like kites with broken strings. The 2 poor kids, who shared the same fate, looked at each other. Damn it, it was not a good thing that they could speak human language. If not for the fact that they were the only ones who could speak human language, the black-hearted master would not have let them do such a wicked thing. The nightmare beast felt that it was even more miserable than the little black bird. The little black bird only said that the roast meat was delicious, but it said those words. That Jinx would deal with it sooner or later. It was simply hopeless. Their black-hearted master was currently in the middle of the storm. Fortunately, this fellow had always been thick-skinned. Even though he was being stared at by Di Biming, he still continued to eat the roast meat leisurely. Prince Charming, why are you out? Did you smell the aroma of the roast meat and want to eat it too? Di Biming stared at her gloomily and said coldly, 3 palaces, 6 courtyards, and 72 concubines. Marry one of each type. How dare you? Yun Chujio raised her head and glanced at him. Prince Charming, don't you have no emotions now? Then you definitely won't have sex with me, right? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks, but I still want to give birth to a monkey. If you don't want to have sex with me, then they'll find someone else to have sex with. Is there a problem with that? Don't worry, they'll reserve the position of queen for you. You're the most important thing in my heart. Di Biming took a deep breath, and his expression became even uglier. He said gloomily, you have a Guai Chao in your dantian. How can you have an affair with someone else? Guai Chao can be removed sooner or later. I'll marry it first and keep it in the harem to prepare for it. I don't want to be caught off guard. Besides, even if I can't have sex with them, they can hug me and sleep with me when I'm afraid of the cold. Yun Chujio's face showed a yearning expression. The moment Di Biming thought of Yun Chujio being hugged by another man, the anger in his heart was like a rising flame, almost exploding him. If you dare to do that, I will. Yun Chujio threw the barbecued meat in her hand onto the ground, pointed at Di Biming and said, what will you do? Pretty boy, I have tolerated you for 2 days. Don't think that I will always accommodate you. Do you think that you are so great just because you don't have any emotions? You were born to be my person, and you are my ghost even if you die. I can touch you if I want to, and I can sleep with you if I want to. If you continue to act pretentious with me, I will divorce my husband and marry someone else. As Yun Chujio spoke, she stood on her tiptoes and forcefully hugged Di Biming's neck. She bit his lips. This fellow really bit him until he tasted a trace of fresh blood. Only then did she plan to let Di Biming go. Who would have thought that Di Biming's initially stiff hands would suddenly hug her? The hot kiss was like a storm, instantly causing He Xinjiu to be kissed until the sky turned dark. After a long time, Di Biming finally let go of Yun Chujio. There were still faint traces of blood on his lips, and He Xinjiu's lips were also slightly red and swollen. Moreover, it was obvious that she was a little stunned by the kiss. She changed her previous route of the overlord flower and looked pitiful like a little white flower swaying in the wind and rain. Chapter 3405 gave him another slap after a long silence. Di Biming shook the hand in his sleeve and said in a cold voice, I did this just now to tell you that even without the 7 emotions and 6 desires, I can still be a gentleman with you. If you dare to provoke another man, I will destroy his entire family. If you don't believe me, you can try. After Di Biming finished speaking, he did not care about Yun Chujia's reaction and directly turned around and entered the house. Yun Chujio was stunned for a while. Then, she touched her slightly red and swollen lips and cursed in her heart. What the fuck? Pretentious. This fellow recalled what Di Biming said just now. His eyes were burning with high fighting spirit. Pretty boy, let's wait and see. At this moment, Di Biming's heart was in a mess in the room. He calmed down and understood that Yun Chujia's words about marrying a concubine were meant to anger him. However, he still felt a sense of frustration. He could not describe what he felt in his heart. The moment he closed his eyes, the image of that passionate kiss appeared in his mind. Why did he feel a sense of satisfaction and joy when he did something that should have been something that he rejected? He remembered that Yun Chujio had bitten his lips like a violent lion, and some parts of his body had actually. Di Biming gritted his teeth in frustration and took out Xue Wuji's voice transmission talisman. If you two can't kill Emperor Mu Xian within 5 days, then you don't have to live anymore. I don't raise trash. On the other side, when Xue Wuji received Di Biming's voice transmission talisman, he felt as if his heart was going to explode. Wasn't this person expressionless? Why did he suddenly lose his temper? Damn it, he must have been taught a lesson by little sister Jiu. That was why he took it out on them. How shameless. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Di Biming put away the voice transmission talisman. He thought that once Mu Xian died, he would help her to calm down the situation and then he could leave. As long as he could not see her, he would not feel guilty and would not be affected by her emotions. Then everything would return to normal. At this moment, Xiao Hanio and Meng Yanshou sneaked back to the courtyard. Xiao Hanio's strong body was fine, but Meng Yanshou was in trouble. Its body was a level 1 wind blade rabbit. When it returned to Yun Chujio, it was only left with one breath. Little fairy, I have given my all for you. If you have a conscience, change my shell this time. Meng Yanshou said as he took his last breath. Yun Chujio ignored him and took out a wind blade rabbit. Even though Meng Yanshou was unwilling, he didn't dare to say anything when he thought about the bad guy in the house. At this moment, the night was getting darker. Yun Chujio didn't greet Di Biming and went back to the house next door. Di Biming thought that Yun Chujio would call him over, but Yun Chujio didn't call him at midnight. She didn't cry either. Di Biming hesitated for a moment. He used his divine sense to scan the room next door. He saw Yun Chujio sitting in a bathtub. Her head was tilted to the side and she fainted. Di Biming's heart tightened. He quickly ran over. His speed was so fast that he only left an afterimage. Di Biming rushed into the room and hurriedly carried Yun Chujio out of the bathtub. Little Jiu, what's wrong? Are you having a heart attack again? Yun Chujio opened her eyes and looked at him in confusion. Then, she looked at her naked body and slapped Di Biming. Pervert. Chapter 3406 Despised people like you who did not mean what they said. Only then did Di Biming realize that the person in his arms was not wearing anything. Her snow-white skin was like fine white jade. He suddenly threw Yun Chujio onto the bed and left the room in a panic. Di Biming stood at the door with a blank mind. Yun Chujio's palm print was still on his face. He was stunned for a while like a wooden sculpture. Hei Xinjiu, who was in the room, was also very upset. She really did not do it on purpose this time. Damn it, no matter how thick-skinned she was, she could not do such a thing. She was in a bad mood, so when she returned to the room, she took out her phone book to pass the time. After looking at it, she realized that it was late at night. In addition, the smell of the barbecued meat made her smell like fireworks, so she got out the bathtub. She wanted to take a shower before going to bed. Who would have thought that she was so tired that she actually fell asleep while taking a shower? When this fellow thought of the situation just now, her face immediately turned red and she was extremely angry. She had also let down her guard because he was here. Moreover, Di Biming's spiritual power was much higher than hers, so she did not notice that someone had come. Her body was wet, and she could not just lie there. She could only get up and wipe her body, and then she began to change the bedding. Di Biming heard the movement in the room, and only then did he come back to his senses. He said coldly, "I mistakenly thought that you fainted, that's why I did it. You should rest." Yun Chujia's disdainful voice came from the room, "Bah. I don't like people like you who don't mean what you say. You obviously covet my beauty, but you pretend to be serious. Who are you lying to?" Di Biming opened his mouth, but he did not know how to explain. He turned around and was about to leave when Yun Chujio opened the door from inside. She looked at him with a faint smile, "If you don't feel guilty, then sleep with me. Otherwise, you're afraid that you won't be able to control yourself if you sleep with me." Di Biming looked at Yun Chujia's fair little face and unconsciously glanced at her still dripping long hair. Something seemed to be slowly waking up in his body. He turned around stiffly. He said coldly, "I don't need to prove anything to you. Rest in peace." After saying that, Di Biming turned around and walked into the room next door. However, his footsteps were slightly flustered. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Yun Chujio pouted and closed the door with a bang. When Di Biming returned to the room, the scene of kissing in the daytime flashed in his mind. It was the beautiful scene that he saw just now. It took him a long time to calm down. He thought for a while and thought that maybe he had just broken the seal, which was why his realm wasn't stable. That was why he was easily affected by external things. With that thought, he finally calmed down. Lying on the bed, he closed his eyes and prepared to sleep. After a while, he suddenly sat up. When he opened the door, that little rascal's hair was wet. She wouldn't just sleep like that, would she? If that was the case, she might catch a cold. If she caught a cold, it would trigger a mental illness. The more Di Biming thought about it, the more he felt that the situation was a little serious. He immediately got out of the bed and walked quickly to Yun Chujia's house. He was about to raise his hand to push the door open, but he stopped again. What happened? If he was worried that she would catch a cold, he could have used his spiritual sense to scan her. Why did he rush over here in such a hurry? He did not want to think too much. Just as he was about to use his spiritual sense to check the situation inside, he heard Yun Chujia's faint voice from inside the room, "The night is long, and only the 5 of you are with me. You are much stronger than that pretty boy. Not only are you strong and powerful, but you are also absolutely loyal to me." Chapter 3407, How to Secure the Door. Di Biming saw the 5 tall figures reflected on the window paper. When he thought of what Yun Chujio had just said, he was so angry that he almost exploded. 5. So what she had said during the day was not a joke. She had already prepared everything. Was the one today the strong type? Di Biming raised his hand and smashed the door into pieces. When he saw the situation inside the room, he was stunned. There were 5 puppets made of 1,000-year-old black iron on the ground. They were not the 5 adulterers that he had imagined. When the 5 puppets saw Di Biming enter, they automatically protected Yun Chujio behind them. Just when Di Biming was feeling extremely awkward, Yun Chujio said faintly, "Prince Charming, you are really lacking in the 5 elements. Did you have a grudge with the sect in your previous life? You also smashed the door of this house. How am I supposed to sleep at night? This venerable self will help you remove the door." Di Biming left these words, leaving only an afterimage of Yun Chujio. Yun Chujio pouted and said to the 5 puppets, "It seems that there's no need for you to stand guard for me tonight. A fool has delivered himself to my door. Yun Chujio put away the 5 puppets, then lay on the bed and looked at a certain person who quickly returned with a door. Yun Chujio curled her lips slightly. It seemed that the pretty boy's heart was still in a mess. Otherwise, why didn't he put the door into his storage ring and carried it over by himself? How could Di Biming do such a rough job like in men? After a long time, he still hadn't settled down. He could only take out Feng's voice transmission talisman and asked gloomily, "How are you going to men?" Feng, who was rushing to the scenery city, was speechless. A familiar smell, a familiar formula. Did their lord break the door of the 9th miss again? If you have the ability, don't fix the door for her. You really owe her. Although Feng was complaining in his heart, he still gave a detailed and patient instruction to Feng. After all, Feng could be said to be familiar with the door. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Speaking of which, he felt bitter and sad. He had helped their esteemed lord and the palace master's wife to settle down countless doors. It was truly a sin. Finally, Feng guided a certain to settle down the doors. A certain Zhou's smiling voice was heard just as a certain Zhou was about to leave. "Prince Charming, since you can't sleep because you're thinking about me when you go back, then stop tormenting yourself. Let's sleep together." Di Biming wanted to refute her, but when he saw that Yun Chujio's hair was still wet, he immediately walked towards Yun Chujio unhappily. Yun Chujio saw the anger in Di Biming's eyes and her heart tightened. She was done for. She had gone too far. Would this crazy person spank her little bottom? Di Biming walked to the bedside and said unhappily, "Why don't you dry your hair?" Yun Chujio, while this guy was still confused, he saw Di Biming pull her up and take out a handkerchief to dry her hair. Then, he used his spiritual power to help her dry her hair completely. Don't you know that you have a mental illness? What if you catch a cold and it causes a mental illness? You spend the whole day thinking about useless things. Why aren't you paying attention to these important things? Yun Chujio was dumbfounded. Did the living dead become a chatterbox? Di Biming finally finished his long speech and said, "I'm not concerned about you, nor am I concerned about you. If your mental illness were to happen again, I wouldn't be able to leave to handle my matters. Don't think too much." Yun Chujio, this fellow curled his lips in his heart. Was it useful to say these words to an experienced driver like her? Chapter 3408 was a step-by-step process. Hei Xinjiu rolled her eyes, and bad water came out of her eyes. She looked like she was about to cry. Sob. I know that I don't have any status in your heart. I'm your burden. If that's the case, why do you care about me? Just let me live and die on my own. Di Biming was very annoyed when he saw this, but he did not know what to say. His heart was in a mess now, and he could only say with a straight face, "It's late. Go to sleep." While he was half asleep, Di Biming only realized later. Why was he sleeping here in a daze? Just as he was thinking, Yun Chujio was nestled in his arms again, muttering, "Beauty, my little beauty." Just as Di Biming was in a daze, the person in his arms started to move up, down, and her hands. Di Biming was both embarrassed and annoyed. Why did everything go wrong when he met this little girl? He got off the bed in anger and stood by the side of the bed, looking at a certain Jiu who continued to move up, down, and her hands. He was speechless. He stood by the side of the bed for a while, and his chaotic mood calmed down a lot. His face returned to its usual calm. He took out the futon and began to meditate on the ground. The next morning, Hei Xinjiu opened her eyes and stretched. Then, she caught a glimpse of Di Biming who was meditating on the ground. This fellow looked at the quilt that she had crushed into a ball and felt a little annoyed. What the fuck? She had thought that the gigolo had been enlightened, but it seemed that he had to simmer it down slowly. Yun Chujio felt that she could not force him too much. She had to take things slowly and gradually. Therefore, after he got up, he did not continue to act like a demon. He washed up and ate his breakfast. He did not bother with Di Baiming, who was meditating. Di Baiming naturally noticed that Yun Chuzhou had woken up. He thought that Yun Chuzhou would pester him again and ask him to prepare breakfast. He did not expect that He Xinjiu did not bother with him at all. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Di Baiming felt a hint of unhappiness in his heart. He could not tell exactly why he was unhappy, so he decided not to think about it and continued to meditate on the ground. Yun Chuzhou finished her breakfast and said to Di Baiming, who was meditating, "I'm going to the city wall to inspect it. I reckon that you don't have time to accompany me, so I'll go by myself. You can continue to cultivate." Yun Chuzhou did not wait for Di Baiming's reply. She walked out of the courtyard and came to the bottom of the city wall. When the soldiers of the Dongfeng kingdom saw Yun Chuzhou, they all knelt down and bowed. The female emperor of Zephyr City toppling beauty is unparalleled in the world. Even the soldiers of the other three kingdoms also knelt down and bowed. After fighting side by side for this period of time, they admired the courage and wisdom of the female emperor of Zephyr City toppling beauty from the bottom of their hearts. The prestige of the female emperor of Zephyr was even higher than that of their own country's monarch. Yun Chuzhou waved her claws indifferently. "All of you, get up. It's been tough defending the city, but don't worry, I won't mistreat you." Hearing Yun Chuzhou's words, everyone cheered again. Not far away, Di Baiming, who followed closely, saw this scene, and the feelings in his heart became even more complicated. Although he had removed a part of the seal and his spiritual power had increased greatly, he still did not have his own power. In some aspects, he could not even compare to Little Jiu. It seemed that he had to take back what originally belonged to him. Yun Chuzhou inspected the city wall and found nothing unusual. The people of the Jingmu kingdom were probably scared out of their wits by the gigolo. Chapter 3409 was a certain someone in, and Men Yun Chuzhou went down the city wall and found Di Baiming standing not far away. This guy curled his lips in his heart. Didn't he not care about her? Wasn't his heart like dead water? Then why did he follow her here? For a walk. This guy walked to Di Baiming's side and said in surprise, Prince Charming, why are you here? Are you concerned about me? Di Baiming looked at her coldly and said coldly, "I'm just taking a walk." Yun Chuzhou, she couldn't be bothered to expose him. Anyway, there was still a long way to go and there would be a chance to deal with him sooner or later. After returning to the city lord's mansion, He Xinjiu still ignored Di Baiming and didn't follow Di Baiming to his house. Instead, she entered the house without a door and continued to draw talismans. Di Baiming meditated and cultivated for a while. He felt a little irritated. After hesitating for a while, he released his spiritual sense to check. He saw that the little girl was concentrating on drawing talismans. Di Baiming stared at Yun Chuzhou's focused side profile and couldn't help but feel a little dazed. At this moment, Yun Chuzhou seemed to have sensed something and tilted her head to blink her eyes. Di Baiming was so scared that he immediately retracted his spiritual sense. His heart was beating violently. Could it be that she had discovered it? How could it be? His spiritual sense was very powerful. How could that little girl notice him? It must be a coincidence. Even so, Di Baiming did not dare to release his spiritual sense to check. That little girl was too cunning. If she knew that he did this, she would definitely climb up. Di Baiming closed his eyes and wanted to continue meditating. However, no matter what he said, he could not calm down. He was really annoyed. What was wrong with him? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. He paced back and forth in the room, and then his gaze fell on the door at the door. A glimmer of light flashed in his eyes, and he hurriedly left the room. A moment later, Yun Chuzhou, who was concentrating on drawing talismans in the room, saw a certain someone carrying a door and walking to the door expressionlessly. This door was broken by me. I will help you install the door, Di Baiming said coldly. Yun Chuzhou nodded and continued to draw the talisman. Seeing this, the uneasiness in the heart of a certain venerate grew even more. He started to draw the door. Not to mention getting familiar with it, the efficiency of a certain venerate had greatly increased. After drawing the door, a certain venerate glanced at He Xinjiu, who was still focused on drawing the talisman. He frowned and said unhappily, "Don't you know that you have a mental illness? You have been drawing for several hours. Do you want your mental illness to flare up and win my sympathy?" Yun Chuzhou finally lifted her head and looked at him. "You are a person without emotions and desires. How would you know what sympathy is? However, you are right. I have indeed been drawing for a long time. I will go out for a walk. You can cultivate in the city lord's mansion. You don't have to protect me." After Yun Chuzhou finished speaking, she put away the talisman brush and strolled out of the house. She did not bother with a certain someone whose expression was obviously not too good. Di Baiming looked at Yun Chuzhiu's lively back and felt very annoyed. Just when he was unable to process his thoughts, a sharp pain came from his body. His expression changed and he hurriedly sat down cross-legged. He used his spiritual power to suppress the intense pain and coldness that kept on surging. Soon, his body was covered in a layer of ice. The ice was getting thicker and thicker, and he looked like an ice sculpture. Yun Chuzhou hopped around outside. She did not know why, but she was a little flustered. She had no choice but to hop back to the city lord's mansion. Chapter 34:10 I know what's going on. The moment Yun Chuzhou got close to her courtyard, she felt a bone-chilling cold. She pushed open the door and saw that the trees, flowers, and plants in the courtyard had all been frozen to the point of withering. Her heart tightened, and when she raised her head, she saw Di Baiming, who had already become an ice sculpture. Yun Chuzhiu's head buzzed. Just as she was about to go forward and help Di Baiming break the hard ice on Di Baiming's body suddenly exploded, and Di Baiming opened his eyes. Yun Chuzhiu's heart tightened. If the previous Di Baiming still had a trace of humanity and anger, then the current Di Baiming was really no different from an ice sculpture. What was going on? Di Baiming looked at Yun Chuzhou without any emotion in his eyes. He only said in a declarative tone, "I will go and take care of Emperor Mu Xian now. I believe you can handle the rest of the matters on your own. If you have a mental illness, I will find a famous doctor to treat you. You don't have to worry. If you are in any danger, just send me a voice transmission talisman." After Di Baiming finished speaking, he turned into an afterimage and disappeared in front of Yun Chuzhou. Yun Chuzhou was stunned for a moment. Did this mean that all her previous efforts had been in vain? How did things turn out like this after she went out? Yun Chuzhou felt that all the strength in her body had been drained and she collapsed on the ground. What exactly was going on? The nightmare beast that was kept by Yun Chuzhou in the bushes jumped over while trembling. "Damn, I'm freezing to death. I'm really envious of long hair now. Little fairy, don't be anxious. I know what's going on." Meng Yanshou looked at Yun Chuzhou. Yun Chuzhou looked up at Meng Yanshou. "Speak." Meng Yanshou knew that Yun Chuzhou was in a bad mood, so he didn't dare to keep her in suspense. He quickly said, "Sheng Zun's body is frozen. His old illness must have relapsed. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks, I think he sealed his 7 emotions and 6 desires to resist the cold poison. Previously, you aroused his mortal heart, so the seal was loosened, so his old illness immediately flared up. When his old illness acted up, he had no choice but to seal his 7 emotions and 6 desires again. Moreover, it seems that the seal is even tighter than the last time, so he has become even colder." When Yun Chuzhou heard Meng Yanshou's words, her heart welled up with traces of pain. If there was still some resentment before, now it had turned into tenderness. She bit her lips. Forget it. Next time, she would not flirt with him. Anyway, it was good that she knew that he had her in his heart. When the old illness was cured, she would look for him to settle the score. Yun Chujia's ability to adjust her heart was extraordinary. Thinking of this, she did not feel so bad anymore. She took out a voice transmission talisman from her storage ring. "Prince Charming, I will take care of myself. You have to be careful." On the other side, Di Biming received Yun Chujia's voice transmission talisman. His expression did not change at all, but he still replied with an emotionless mm. When Yun Chujio heard Di Biming's she was very satisfied. At the very least, she could still answer her. This was not bad. Alright, her requirements were already so low. There was no one else who had such a good-tempered girlfriend. Just as Yun Chujio was thinking about it, Shui Wuji's voice transmission talisman started to vibrate. "Little sister Jiu, what did you do? Why did that expressionless man change his mind again? Did he ask Feng and me to return to that damned place again? Brother Wuji has a long story to tell. In short, he originally returned to the secular world, but now he has shaved his head again." On the other side, Shui Wuji. Chapter 34:11 was an all-out war at night. Yun Chujio had a barbecue party with the silly girls in the yard. Her depressed mood was finally somewhat relieved. There was indeed a famous saying that nothing could not be solved by a barbecue. If one meal was not enough, then two. 2 days later, Emperor Mu Xian suddenly died. A few princes of the Jingmu kingdom began to fight for the throne. The army stationed in the East Phoenix kingdom had all retreated back to the Jingmu kingdom. Hei Xinjiu blinked her eyes. This was a once-in-lifetime opportunity. She would be a fool if she didn't seize this opportunity to conquer the Jingwood kingdom. Therefore, after Emperor Nanxian and the others had conquered all 6 vassal states, the allied army of the 4 kingdoms began to conquer the Jingwood kingdom. The princes of the Jingwood kingdom didn't have the energy to resist the foreign enemies anymore. They were all trying to seize the throne. Moreover, they didn't care about the allied forces of the 4 countries at all. They thought that the Jingmu kingdom's cities were strong, and the allied forces of the 4 countries wouldn't be able to take down a few cities in a short time. It wouldn't be too late to deal with the allied forces of the 4 countries after the throne was confirmed. Unexpectedly, when the fight for the throne of the Jingmu kingdom finally came to an end, the newly ascended Emperor Gongzhou received the news that the allied forces of the 4 countries had already taken over half of the Jingmu kingdom's territory before he could sit firmly on the throne. They were heading towards Ganchu city. Emperor Gongzhou felt a little numb. If the 4-country alliance army took over Ganchu city, then the defense line of the Jingmu kingdom would collapse. It was very likely that the 4-country alliance army would take over Jing city. Emperor Gongzhou quickly mobilized 200,000 troops to Ganchu city. He was determined to stop the 4-country alliance army in Ganchu city and even chase them out of the Jingmu kingdom. The general who led the troops this time was an old acquaintance of Yun Chujio. It was Imperial Chancellor Lu. Imperial Chancellor Lu was really good at following the wind. When he heard that the crown prince had died, he directly placed his bet on Emperor Gongzhou. Come and read on our website Wuxia World Site. Thanks. After Imperial Chancellor Lu ascended the throne, he immediately married Lu Hanyan as his empress. Imperial Chancellor Lu once again became the ruler of 1 man and 10,000 men. Therefore, Imperial Chancellor Lu brought his troops to Ganchu city this time to use all his strength to deal with the allied forces of the 4 countries. Otherwise, he would not be able to maintain his glory and wealth. After Imperial Chancellor Lu brought his troops to Ganchu city, he waited for the arrival of the allied forces of the 4 countries. Imperial Chancellor Lu was still very confident. The 200,000 troops that he brought along with the 50,000 troops that were originally stationed in Ganchu city made a total of 250,000. Although the 4-nation alliance army had 300,000 soldiers, their spiritual power was generally lower than that of the Jingmu kingdom army. In addition, Ganzhou city was easy to defend and difficult to attack. It was simply wishful thinking for the Four-Nation Alliance army to take over Ganzhou city. Moreover, they had lost so many cities previously because of the fight for the throne of the Jingmu kingdom. Otherwise, the Four-Nation Alliance army would not have won by luck. Soon, the Four-Nation Alliance army arrived outside Ganzhou city. However, they did not attack the city immediately. Instead, they camped outside Ganzhou city. In the meeting tent of the Four-Country Alliance army, everyone was discussing countermeasures. Your Majesty Fenghua, our morale is high, why don't we attack the city directly? Emperor Nan Xian was in high spirits. He thought that the Jingwood country was great, but in the end, they did not even dare to fight. If he had known earlier, he would not have been bullied by them in the past. Yun Chujiu glanced at him. There are 250,000 Jingwood country troops in Ganzhou city. Do you think that we can succeed? Haven't you heard of going all out and failing again? If we are defeated in one attack, our morale will be low, so we have to plan carefully before we can attack the city. Chapter 34:12 Military Order. Emperor Nan Xian had been extremely arrogant these days. How could he listen to Yun Chujiu's words? He said indignantly, Your Majesty Fenghua, aren't you being too arrogant? You're ruining the spirit of our own people. The Jingmu kingdom is just a paper tiger. It doesn't have any ability to resist at all. Emperor Xuan and Emperor Beijing, do you think this is the case? Your Majesty Fenghua, I think what Emperor Nanxian said makes sense. The Jingwood kingdom is just a facade and doesn't have any fighting strength. We might as well finish the battle as soon as possible so that there won't be any trouble, Emperor Xuan agreed. Emperor Beijing added, yes, the new emperor of the Jingwood kingdom has just ascended the throne, and the throne hasn't been firmly established yet. The army he has mobilized is also a motley crew. We can totally take down Ganzhou city in one go. Emperor Xuan and Emperor Beijing were also a little complacent. They had conquered the other 6 vassal states without much effort. Moreover, ever since they had entered the Jingwood kingdom, they had been unstoppable. They hadn't encountered any strong resistance at all, so they also felt that Yun Chujiu was making a mountain out of a molehill. Yun Chujiu glanced at the 3 of them. Since you insist on attacking the city, just pretend that I didn't say anything just now. However, this siege is no small matter. If it fails, countless lives will be sacrificed. 3 of you, do you dare to issue a military order? Hearing Yun Chujiu's provocative words, Emperor Nan Xian and the other 2 naturally did not show any weakness. In a muddle-headed manner, they issued a military order. If they could not take down Ganzhou city within 3 days, they would listen to Yun Chujiu's arrangements in the future. They could not have any more objections. When the 3 of them regained their senses, they had already pressed their hand seals and sealed the jade seals of the 3 kingdoms. It was too late to go back on their words. However, when the 3 of them thought about it, a mere Ganzhou city wasn't a problem at all. 3 days were enough. Hence, Emperor Nan Xian and the other 2 immediately mobilized their troops and began to attack the city. Prime Minister Sima secretly moved closer to Empress Jiu and asked in a low voice, Your Majesty, what do you think their chances of winning are? Come and read on our website Wuxia World Site. Thanks, there's no chance of winning. Prime Minister Sima, then why didn't you stop them? After this defeat, we have lost at least tens of thousands of people. Prime Minister Sima said worriedly. Firstly, if I stop them, they will only have a rebellious mentality. They might not listen to me. Secondly, not only them, but even the people below them are drifting. If we don't teach them a lesson, they will not learn their lesson. Thirdly, Yun Chujiu said this, she laughed sinisterly. Prime Minister Sima shivered. Whenever their emperor smiled like this, someone would be in trouble. Yun Chujiu laughed a few times and continued, thirdly, it is only a matter of time before the Jingwood kingdom is taken down. When that time comes, we will definitely have to redivide the territory. If I don't have something on the three of them, how will I make them bow down to me? Prime Minister Sima was stunned. He silently lit a big red candle for Emperor Nanxian and the other two. Did they want to play tricks with His Majesty? Play them to death without any discussion. On the other side, Emperor Nanxian and the other two were in high spirits. Although a little girl was strong, how strong could she be? At the crucial moment, it was up to them. That night, the four-country alliance army launched an attack. Imperial Chancellor Lu was already prepared. All of a sudden, poison arrows, rolling stones, logs, and talismans were shot out from the city wall. He also learned from Yun Chuzhou and dug out the poison blade trap. Although there was only one layer of poison blade, it caused many casualties among the four-country alliance army. Chapter 34:13, Empress Zhou's scolding array. Emperor Nanxian and the other two did not pay much attention to it at the start. How could a siege not kill people? However, seeing that the sky had turned cold and bright, there was still no progress. Furthermore, the defending troops of Ganshi City were getting stronger and stronger. On the other hand, the allied forces of the four countries were already tired after the days of fighting and could not take down the city. Their morale plummeted. Although the hearts of Emperor Nanxian and the other two were beating a little, they still forced the allied forces of the four countries to continue attacking. Within 3 days, the allied forces of the four countries had launched several attacks. More than 30,000 people were killed and injured, but there was no progress at all. Imperial Chancellor Lu was good at buying people's hearts. He gave a speech to the soldiers of the Jingmu Kingdom. The gist of it was to say that the allied forces of the four countries were invaders and they were protecting the country. They stood at the moral high ground. All of a sudden, the morale of the Jingwu Kingdom was unprecedentedly high. Seeing that there was no progress, Emperor Nanxian and the other two had no choice but to come to see Empress Zhou. Empress Zhou glanced at them, but she didn't rub salt on their wounds. Instead, she said lightly, "Since you have lost, then listen to my arrangements from now on. Go and rest." Emperor Nanxian and the other two walked out of the meeting tent dejectedly. Emperor Nanxian suddenly stopped in his tracks and said, "Eh?" From her tone, why do I feel that we are inferior to her? Emperor Beijing glanced at him. What do you mean by inferior? It's already good that she didn't take the opportunity to make fun of us. Do you want her to say something unpleasant? Let's go back and rest. I haven't slept well for the past 3 days. Let's sleep first. Emperor Nanxian thought that he was right. Perhaps he was overthinking things, so the three of them returned to the tent to rest. Seeing that Emperor Nanxian and the other two had left, Prime Minister Sima asked, "Your Majesty, do you have a way to break the city?" Yun Chuzhou shook her head. Not at the moment. Let's rest for a day first. I'll go scold the enemy tomorrow. Prime Minister Sima did not continue to ask. His Majesty was not good at other things, but his scolding skills were top-notch. He would just have to watch the show tomorrow. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. The next day, Yun Chuzhou had breakfast and rode the giant rabbit to the front of the camp. Hey, the leader of the opposite side has come out. I have something to say to you. Yun Chuzhou sat on the giant rabbit and said lightly. Soon, Imperial Chancellor Lu, who had received the news, stood on the city wall. He saw that it was Yun Chuzhou, and he looked behind her worriedly. Seeing that there was indeed no wild man from the legend, his heart instantly calmed down. He had already sent people to inquire about it. That wild man had left a long time ago. Otherwise, he would really have a headache. Female Emperor Fenghua, what do you have to say? The allied forces of the four countries invaded our Jingmu kingdom for no reason. You are really shameless to the extreme. Imperial Chancellor Lu said righteously. The soldiers of the Jingmu kingdom also joined in the jeering. They were nothing more than scolding the allied forces of the four countries for invading the territories of other countries. They were shameless and so on. The allied forces of the four countries had already been somewhat demoralized after being defeated. When they heard Imperial Chancellor Liu's words, the moral high ground was also occupied by the Jingmu kingdom, and their morale immediately fell even lower. At this moment, they heard Yun Chuzhou chuckle, "Yo, I've seen shameless people before, but this is the first time I've seen someone as shameless as you. We invaded your Jingmu kingdom for no reason. What a joke. Not long ago, your Jingmu kingdom sent a letter to our East Phoenix kingdom, asking me, the emperor of a kingdom, to be the former crown prince's side concubine. Isn't this a blatant provocation? However, for the sake of peace and the overall situation, our East Phoenix kingdom did not do anything disrespectful. Moreover, in order to express our sincerity, I personally went to the Jingmu kingdom, and the other three emperors accompanied me personally." Yun Chuzhou paused at this point, and a mocking smile appeared on her face. But what happened next showed me what it means to be treacherous, to rely on the strong to bully the weak, and to be shameless. Chapter 34:14 was even more shameless. Yun Chuzhou's words immediately attracted everyone's attention. They continued to listen to her. Emperor Mu Xian broke off the engagement of his own accord in fear that the divine phoenix would blame him. The four of us immediately left Jing City. Who would have thought that we would be hunted down on the way? The leader was the former crown prince. We were lucky enough to escape into the territory of the East Phoenix kingdom. However, Emperor Mu Xian was still unwilling to let us go. He let the former crown prince lead tens of thousands of troops to attack the East Phoenix kingdom in an attempt to annex the four kingdoms. We have been forced to this extent by the Wellwood kingdom. Are we not allowed to fight back? Do the people of the four kingdoms and the 10 vassal kingdoms deserve to be invaded? Yes. When the allied forces of the four kingdoms heard Yun Chuzhou's words, they immediately straightened their backs like the grass that had been dry for a long time was nourished by the rain. They were not invaders, they were just defending themselves. Imperial Chancellor Lu sneered, "No matter how glib your tongue is, your four-nation alliance army is now on the land of our Jingmu country. This confirms that you are invaders." Emperor Nan Xian and the other two felt their hearts sink. This Imperial Chancellor Lu was indeed difficult to deal with. If he insisted on this point, they really had no reason to defend themselves. At this moment, Yun Chuzhou's clear voice was heard, "Invasion? Imperial Chancellor Lu, who gave you the face to criticize our four-nation alliance army? You invaded first, so we can only swallow our anger. And then wait for you to recover your strength before you invade us again. We are just preparing for a rainy day. Also, Imperial Chancellor Lu, I remember that your daughter, Lu Hanyan, is the fiancée of the previous crown prince, right? How come she has become the empress now? You are a petty person who plays by the wind and sells women for glory, yet you have the nerve to compete with me for the moral high ground? Aren't you too shameless?" Imperial Chancellor Lu was so angry that his face turned red. Before he could refute, he heard Yun Chuzhou continue, "Moreover, the Jingmu kingdom and our 10 vassal states are one body, advancing and retreating together, and sharing life and death together. Come and read on our website Wuxia World Site. Thanks, now that the Jingmu kingdom has been ruined by the imperial family, we have helped you clean up the mess for free. It's fine if you are not grateful, but you actually said that our four countries' allied forces are invading? You are too shameless." No one from the Jingmu kingdom or the four-nation alliance said anything for a while. They were all shocked by Yun Chuzhou's shamelessness. However, they obviously underestimated Yun Chuzhou's shamelessness. She continued, "What the higher-ups said are all great principles. Our four-nation alliance army is the righteous side. In addition, the cultivation world has always respected the strong. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any first-class or third-class countries. Therefore, you don't have to talk to me about invading or not invading. I'll tell you the truth. I have my eyes on the Wellwood Kingdom and want to annex it. What are you going to do about it? Those who don't want to die and want to make a fortune, quickly surrender. Otherwise, you will only die. Don't forget, I am the messenger of the divine phoenix, the darling of the Tian Dao. What right do you have to fight with me? Also, my empress will be back in a few days. Just you little scumbags, he can easily kill a large number of them. Those who don't want to die, quickly surrender. Imperial Chancellor Lu had a stomach full of words that had been refuted by Yun Chujia's shamelessness. When faced with such a shameless person, any words were useless. The people of the Four Countries Alliance army felt that their Emperor Fenghua was simply too domineering. Only such a woman was worthy to be their king. They had an inexplicable belief that as long as their emperor followed them, he would definitely be invincible and invincible. Chapter 34:15 Crazy Boyfriend. The soldiers of the Jingmu Kingdom had also suffered a severe blow to their worldview. Previously, they had thought that what Imperial Chancellor Lu had said was very reasonable. They were protecting their country, and they were representing the side of justice. However, after listening to the words of the female emperor of the Zephyr Kingdom, they felt that all of this was the doing of the Jingmu Kingdom, and they had brought this upon themselves. Moreover, he felt that although the spiritual power of the female emperor of Zephyr was a little low, she was much stronger than the Gongzhou emperor, who only knew how to seize the throne. Also, the sudden death of the late emperor might have been caused by the fiancé of the female emperor of Phoenix. He heard that the fiancé of the female emperor of Zephyr was very powerful. It was still fine if he wasn't here. But if he came back, how could they survive? Imperial Chancellor Lu held it in for a long time before he finally said, "There's no point in talking anymore. I'll see you on the battlefield." Yun Chujiu shrugged nonchalantly, "That sounds nice, but you guys are hiding in Gonchur City like assholes. How are we going to fight to the death? If you have the ability, come out." Imperial Chancellor Lu couldn't figure out Yun Chujia's intention at the moment. If she set a trap, he would be walking into a trap if he rashly led his troops to battle. Therefore, he ignored Yun Chujia's provocation and left the city wall. Yun Chujiu curled her lips and said to Emperor Nan Xian and the other two, "Pick a sharp-tongued and loud-mouthed one and scold me non-stop." Emperor Nan Xian and the other two obviously had not recovered from Yun Chujia's shameless words. They nodded blankly. After Yun Chujiu returned to the meeting tent, she held her chin and thought about how to take over Gonchur City. Fighting head-on was definitely not going to work. In terms of strength, they could not beat the Jingmu army. Luckily, Imperial Chancellor Lu was too cautious. Otherwise, if he brought his troops out to fight, the Four-Country Alliance army might be defeated. The reason why she had people curse was to create confusion so that Imperial Chancellor Lu would not come back to his senses and bring his troops out to fight. Come and read on our website Wuxia World Site. Thanks. Yun Chujiu gathered Emperor Nan Xian and the others to discuss. After a day of discussion, they could not come up with any good ideas, so Yun Chujiu had no choice but to dismiss them. This fellow washed up briefly in the evening and lay in the tent. After pondering for a long time, he did not make any progress. He rubbed his chin. Forget it. Since he had nothing to do anyway, he could chat with Empress D. This fellow took out a voice transmission talisman and sent a few messages to D. Biming. It was nothing more than to tell him about the recent situation, telling him to be careful of Yun Yun. This fellow was shrewd. From time to time, his boyfriend would have to swear an oath of sovereignty, so that those flirtatious bitches would not have a chance to take advantage of him. Even if D. Biming had sealed his 7 emotions and 6 desires, it was still better to tease him a little when he had nothing to do. Teasing him a little would hurt his body, but teasing him a little would bring him pleasure. Cough cough. To be honest, Yun Chujiu did not expect D. Biming to be able to reply. After all, today was different from the past. He was a cold-hearted master. Who would have thought that after a while, the voice transmission talisman actually started to vibrate. Yun Chuzhou could not wait to send her divine sense in. Di Baiming's emotionless voice came from within, "Get to the point." Yun Chuzhou was stunned for a moment before she reacted. Di Baiming meant that she had rambled on and on. What did he want to say? Yun Chuzhou gritted her teeth and squeezed out a sentence, "It's okay, my balls hurt." Very soon, Yun Chuzhou received another reply from Di Baiming. 1. You don't have any eggs. 2. Don't waste the voice transmission talisman. Yun Chuzhou, her boyfriend turned into a psychopath. Why did he break? Chapter 34 16 Poisonous mushrooms. Yun Chuzhou angrily kept the sound transmission talisman and thought to herself, "Pretty boy, I'm not afraid to settle the score, well just wait and see." In the next few days, the four-country alliance army sent people to scold them, but the Jingmu country did not have any reaction. Yun Chuzhou asked the four-country alliance army to dig some traps, but Emperor Nan Xian and the other two did not think much of it. The Jingmu country army obviously would not come out to fight, so what was the use of digging or not? Yun Chuzhou glanced at the three of them. This is called being prepared. If the Jingmu army really comes out, are you sure you can win? Emperor Nan Xian and the other two did not say anything. They had been really arrogant a few days ago, and after being defeated, they had become much more obedient. Yun Chuzhou was actually really anxious. If this continued, the longer it dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for the four-country alliance army. They needed to think of a way to break through the city as soon as possible. Fortune does not come in pairs, and misfortune does not come in pairs. Just as Yun Chuzhou was worried about attacking the city, people in the army were poisoned one after another. Some vomited, some had diarrhea, and some had hallucinations. Luckily, as they discovered it early, no one lost their lives because of this. When Yun Chuzhou received the report, her heart tightened. Could it be that a spy had poisoned their food? After a careful investigation, she found out that there was a dense forest not far from where the army was stationed, and there were many mushrooms growing inside. The soldiers in charge of food wanted to improve their food, so they picked a lot of mushrooms and stewed them with the chicken. They did not expect that there might be some poisonous mushrooms mixed in, which caused this small accident. After hearing the reason, Emperor Nan Xian said angrily, "They are simply looking for trouble. They don't lack food, so why pick mushrooms when they have nothing to do?" Emperor Xuan echoed, "That's right, we must punish those cooks. If we hadn't found them earlier, and if the soldiers were poisoned on a large scale, how terrible would it be? Come and read on our website Wuxia World Site." Thanks. Emperor Beijing sighed, "It would be great if the people guarding the city ate these poisonous mushrooms. It would be much easier for us to attack the city." "What did you say?" Empress Jiu asked as she stared at Emperor Beijing with sparkling eyes. Emperor Beijing was a little scared by Yun Chuzhou's stare. He stuttered, I said, how great it would be if these poisonous mushrooms were eaten by the people of the Jingmu kingdom." Yun Chuzhou's heart skipped a beat. She remembered that in the psychedelic forest, she had said that she wanted to eat poisonous mushrooms. Xiao Mogu had summoned a large number of poisonous mushrooms. Xiao Mogu should be able to attract those poisonous mushrooms. However, she didn't know if she could command those poisonous mushrooms. Emperor Beijing and the other two couldn't help but look dumbfounded when they saw Yun Chuzhou standing there with a silly smile on her face. Was this girl stupid? Yun Chuzhou came back to her senses and said, "Let's go and take a look at that dense forest." Emperor Nan Xian and the other two didn't understand. What were they going to look at in that dense forest? Could it be that this girl was also craving for stewed chicken and mushrooms? Wasn't she afraid of being poisoned to death? Although the three of them were filled with suspicion, they still followed Empress Jiu to that dense forest. The area of this dense forest wasn't small, and it extended all the way to the valley in the distance. The deeper they went, the thicker the fog became. Furthermore, the deeper they went, the more mushrooms there were. Your Majesty Fenghua, you can't go any further in. The mushrooms in there can emit poisonous gas. If you're not careful, your life might be in danger, Prime Minister Sima advised from the side. Yun Chujio waved her hand and said, you guys stay here. I'll go in and take a look. I'll be back soon. Before the crowd could react, Yun Chujio had already jumped far away. Chapter 34:17. The mushroom had become a spirit. Prime Minister Sima's head was buzzing. Their emperor was good in every way, but he was too bold. It was filled with poisonous mushrooms. Wasn't she afraid of being poisoned to death? Yun Chujio walked forward for some distance. The strange grass in her dantian began to clamor for the poisonous mushrooms. Yun Chujio scolded, shut up. These poisonous mushrooms are very useful, they are not for you to eat. After Yun Chujio finished scolding the strange grass, she asked Xiao Mogu in the spirit beast bag, Xiao Mogu, can you attract these mushrooms or command these mushrooms? I can attract and command them, but at the moment, I can only attract and command the mushrooms within 100 li. Xiao Mogu answered with slight excitement. Was Master going to let it show its skills? Yun Chujio rolled her eyes and pondered for a moment before giving Xiao Mogu a few instructions. Xiao Mogu readily agreed. Yun Chujio immediately released Xiao Mogu and turned around to return. When Prime Minister Sima and the others saw that Yun Chujio was safe and sound, they finally felt relieved. Yun Chujio held 100 spirit mushroom in her hand behind her back and said with a smile, I thought there would be something like this in here. As expected, I found a few. Let's go, I'll stew some chickens for you when we get back. Prime Minister Sima almost wanted to kneel before His Majesty. His Majesty, please be more careful. At this time, you still want to stew some chickens and mushrooms? Emperor Nan Xian and the other two also curled their lips. This girl was still too young, and she would go crazy from time to time. After everyone returned to the base, Yun Chujio did indeed get someone to stew the mushrooms with chicken meat and then eat a big meal. The next morning, before Yun Chujio woke up, she heard Emperor Nan Xian shouting outside the tent, Emperor Fenghua, come out and take a look. The mushrooms have turned into spirits. The walls of Gonchur city are covered with poisonous mushrooms. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Although Yun Chujio was well aware, she still pretended to be surprised and followed Emperor Nan Xian and the others to the front of the camp to take a look. Although Yun Chujio was mentally prepared, she was still shocked when she saw the scene in front of her. The city walls of Gonchur city were covered with colorful poisonous mushrooms. The soldiers of the Jingmu kingdom were using all kinds of methods to get rid of those poisonous mushrooms. Even so, the poisonous mushrooms were still spreading. Yun Chujio stretched her neck and shouted, oh my! How is it? You will die if you don't do justice. These poisonous mushrooms are a warning from the heavens. Your Jingmu kingdom's fate is over. Quickly surrender. If you do anything wrong again, I'm afraid it won't be as simple as the poisonous mushrooms. Someone might die. The Jingmu kingdom soldiers were already panicking when they saw this strange situation. Now that they heard Yun Chujio's words, they became even more nervous. Was it really a warning from the Tian Dao? Perhaps it was true. Otherwise, why would these poisonous mushrooms grow on the city wall? This didn't make sense at all. Didn't mushrooms grow in the forest and grass? No matter how bad it was still a dark and damp place. Why would they grow on the city wall? Moreover, these were all poisonous mushrooms without exception. This was definitely not a good sign. Imperial Chancellor Lu saw that the morale of the army was wavering. He was so angry that he gritted his teeth. What on earth was going on with these damn poisonous mushrooms? The only thing that comforted him was that fortunately, these poisonous mushrooms could not emit poisonous gas. As long as they were not eaten, they would be fine. However, it was obvious that he was happy too early. Soldiers began to die one after another. For a moment, everyone was in a panic. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.